Hello, supporters of Minneapolis Public Schools. Here's your quick recap on what happened at the November 14th school board meeting. So it was a long meeting, about 4.5 hours long, actually, and the board heard 3 presentations from the district. The first presentation that they heard was something called a pro forma, which is basically the finance department's prediction of what next school year could look like financially. They take enrollment projections, they take the incoming money projections and the expense projections, and they bring those all together to bring them to the board to say, this is what we're thinking might happen. Now, you're going to see in the moments right that we'll attach from the meeting, we're going to attach a few peak moments, or what we think are like important moments, right to the end of this recording. And you'll see a minute here where you can sort of hear Senior Officer of Finance Ibrahima Giap explaining something about the pro forma. I think that'll be really valuable for you. You're also going to hear Director Emmerich talking a little bit about why sometimes that pro forma or budget projection doesn't exactly match up with what actually happens in money, which, like most of us, the budget versus the reality are always different from each other. And I think that will be a good explainer for all of us to watch together. The second presentation that we heard was from a group called ABAR. Now, this group, it's anti-bias, anti-racism group. It's a task force, and it came as a result of the strike. This was something that the teachers union felt strongly that they wanted to have, which was a place or a group of people for educators or educator support staff to go to if they felt they were experiencing racism or bias in their school. They shared a pretty, I would say, honest and hard to listen to report of how difficult it's been, how busy they've been. And kind of overall, what I would want you to know is they definitely shared with the school board that they're going to need more capacity to do this with fidelity. And you'll see a clip of that, of a moment of their report at the end of this as well. And then the final presentation of the evening was the Patrick Henry High School, some of their staff members, their principal, and some of their students talking about the process that they went through to change their name. Patrick Henry High School will be having a new name, and my favorite part of that presentation was listening to the 2 students who led the student engagement work, both at Patrick Henry and at Olson Middle School, and you'll be able to hear all about them and how they did the work and how they engaged with students. You'll see that clip at the end. So it was a long meeting, but really we want to hear from you. What do you need to know about what's happening in Minneapolis Public Schools? What do you want to hear more of? What do you need us to share with you? Our goal is really to solve the problem for you that we're going to try to condense 4.5 hours of meeting time into, 5 minutes with some highlight reels from the meeting for you. So what do you want us to be watching for? Let us know in the comments, share that with us. And then if this is valuable to you, share it with others and subscribe. Thanks for listening.
How I have been saying it is, if it's March and I'm planning to take my family on vacation in July, but I'm looking at my year's worth of finances and I realize, because I know what my monthly expenses are and I know what my one-off expenses are going to be, and I realize that if I take my family on that vacation in July, I'm not going to be able to pay my rent come November and December, right? So I decide to cancel that vacation while I can still get my refund. Okay, we're cutting my vacation budget, and then in November and December I can pay my rent. It doesn't mean my projections were wrong or that was magically money that came out of nowhere. It means that I had the skill and the ability and the forethought to see what was going to unfold in my finances for the year, and I course corrected so that I would be able to cover my most necessary expenses. And so I thank you and your team for making sure that we are doing that as a district. It's incredibly responsible. You're incredibly skilled at it. So having said that, I do have just a couple of questions about the presentation. Going back to slide 5, you said the intervention triads were represented in our expenses. Is that across the entire grid there?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you. My next question is, this was mostly answered on a later slide, but when I look at 6, 7, and 8, so we see some data presented in some different ways there. I believe everything that you're saying in this presentation to the best of your ability because I really trust y'all's team. But we, as you later touch on slide 21, have seen enrollment dips and increases, and we don't always know exactly what's going to contribute to that. So, you know, we saw in 2005 to 2010, looking at slide 6, this dip, and then we saw an increase from 2011 to 2017, and then we start to see this dip again, and we see that with the kindergarten enrollment, you know, sort of that metric as well. So how do we know that over the coming 5 to 10 years, we're not going to see that another upswing in enrollment just because that happens sometimes?
I would not say that we know that at all, right? So we don't know what migration patterns in the United States are going to look like in 5 years, right? So we can only work with the data that we have and with the trends that we're in, and this is what we're seeing. I definitely would not want to do a plan where I planned on a cohort of unidentified students coming in 3 years from now. So it might happen, and that would be great, but I don't think it would be responsible to plan around it.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Thank you for that. Looking at slide 11, let me get there on my... This was something that I didn't hear you touch on when you were talking about this information. Why, what is the significant difference in those federal revenue when you see the big red bars for Minneapolis and St. Paul, and then they're real skinny for Osseo, Rosemont, Apple Valley, and Anoka Hennepin? Can you, what do you attribute that to?
So that is, first of all, some places like Osseo, Anoka Hennepin, Rosemount, they have lower free and reduced lunch levels than we do. So they're gonna receive already fewer federal funds. And then the way the ESSER distributions were made was based on the Title I distributions. And so Minneapolis and St. Paul both got large distributions that how we've been spending to continue operations.
Thank you. I knew you'd have a good answer for me. Slide 17, I'm just gonna try to shoot, I just have a couple more. I'm just trying to shoot them off real fast. Sorry, I'm trying not to speak like that anymore. I'm just gonna try to ask them quickly. So this is another question comparing to other districts when we look at our total square footage. Looking at sort of like the perspective of how other districts came together, like their capital decisions over the timeline of how that district formed, why, if all districts are facing, you know, some pretty significant disenrollment challenges right now, why don't other districts have this overabundance of square footage that we have?
Sure. So I think that the enrollment declines are primarily being felt in the bigger, more urban districts, right? So suburban districts have been more stable, or as in the case of like a Rosemount, Apple Valley, they're actually increasing their enrollment year over year. We also have very old buildings. We have some of the oldest buildings in the state, and it's really, you know, the effect of 150 years of continuously building schools on an as-needed basis. You know, we build them, we use them until we don't need them anymore, but we simply have accumulated this many over, you know, how many ever years.
Pia is right. We have done so much, and it's also a good reminder because we joined the team in January, but it feels like 6 years ago. And we are very passionate about this work because we represent the folks that we are here to support. We've been in the positions that we advocate for, and we understand what it means to call MPS as our professional home. And so in addition to what was shared, we also know that we are small and mighty. So I support all elementary. She supports all secondary. He supports a lot of schools, and the ESPs, they don't only support BIPOC staff, because when we think about underrepresentation in the hierarchy within our system, ESPs and licensed staff of color are folks who leave at the highest rates because of the level of hierarchies or inequity that they experience. So just want to make that clarity and highlight what Elijah was saying. But also, we know that since we have to operate in a way that is larger than us, we want to impact and affect systemic change. So we also get to, be thought partners with building leaders and district leaders, and we provide PD, and we support folks in knowing how to navigate situations when we're not in the buildings. And we encourage, the ideation of making sure that places feel welcoming and belonging to everyone it creates a sense of belonging to everyone who steps foot in the room and in the building. And then how can you prove that you are being intentional about that? So those are some of the conversations we have.
All right, good evening. My name is Jeremy Neon Kuru Jr. I'm a senior at Patrick Henry High School. And so with the criteria, we couldn't just jump head first with coming up a name with the school. We needed to create a criteria, which we broke it up into 3 sections. We had a person criteria, which we divided up. They had to be a historical figure and deceased. We couldn't just have LeBron James High School. That wouldn't we created a criteria so we could have realistic names for our school to help, So the three groups we had were a person, an environment, which we wanted the school name to be somewhere that involved us and our community, no offense, but not Southwest High School. That's not us. We on the north side. So our other value was themes and values. That was our other group that we were kind of focused on, and that reflected on having community values and strengths incorporated in the name. And now I'm gonna hand it over to my colleague Sledge.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Devontae Sledge. I'm a senior at Patrick Henry High School. And I'm gonna walk you through our voting process. So we couldn't just have anybody just vote on the school name. That would be a little outrageous. So first we had a virtual meeting with the community and stuff, and had them put their input on what they would like our community school to be named after. Then we had grade level assemblies. So we had 9th grade and 10th grade assemblies. And then we had junior and senior assemblies, and they all voted on that. And then we had what Brittany mentioned. We went to Olsen Middle School and had them vote for the future. And the name idea suggestions, we had 324. Right. Stay with me. Then the first round rankings, we had 962. And at the end outcome, we had 1,202 voters. Yikes.
Right.
Big numbers. Thank you.